Everybody from PreCalc A to the suffering PreCalc AB students that are wasting away, and every day we lose another one. To the PreCalc B students, the suffering. You were the beginning of all suffering in PreCalc, and you are the end of all suffering in PreCalc. You are the PreCalc AB students. Okay, today, PreCalc B, PreCalc AB, PreCalc A, we are talking about our favorite topic ever.
Friendly angle.
Woo! So, you have an entire worksheet on friendly angles! Woo! PreCalc B, you guys have the added bonus. This is your Wednesday present. That you can ignore all the arctangent and arcsine problems, but everyone else has to do them. So,
You don't have to.
but you can do them just for funsies. Okay, so let's talk about friendly angles. First of all, we have to talk about related angles. So I put a couple of problems on there where they give you an angle, and you have to give me the related angle, or figure out what angle we're actually working with. So, angles in this quadrant are normally from 0 to 90 degrees. From here, 90 to 180, 180 to 270, and 270 to 360. Then it repeats, right? So this one would be 450. This one would be 540, and so on. And so on and so on. This is 720. I don't care to actually figure this out. 660. Okay, now, here's the trick. We don't work with these numbers. We like to work with easier numbers because we've only memorized 30, 45, and 60, right? Those are our big three. All the rest of them we get from those three angles that we've memorized the sine, cosine, and tangent of, right? And then these guys are just, you have to memorize those. So, 0, 90, 180, 270, memorize those. They're from your friendly angles worksheet. But what if I have an angle of, let's say, 120 degrees? Where does that live? Well, it lives between 90 and 180. It lives right here. Okay, because this angle is 120 degrees. But I don't want to work with 120. I don't have something memorized for 120, but I do have something memorized for the related angle. And so when I ask for a related angle, I'm asking for that angle right there. What is this angle?
60.
It's 60. How do you know that? Well, you may look at this and go, I forgot everything. You haven't. This is an Algebra 1 problem, right? You have the straight line, and then you have that thing there, and they tell you this is 120, and they ask what that one is. Okay? You already know this, guys. Like, you've known this for years. Don't pretend to have forgotten. Don't pretend to be like, I don't get it. No, you've got this. What is that angle, everybody?
60.
60. Why? Because the two of them add up to the straight angle, which is 180. Okay? So, with this angle being 60, now I can find what sine, cosine, and tangent of 120 are. What's sine of 120? Well, I'm going to draw in the sides of my friendly triangle. Do you remember your friendly triangles? Of course you do, because they're your only friends in this class. All the people around you, not your friends. No, just kidding. You guys can still be friends. That's fine. Okay, friendly triangles. Let's look at them. So, 30, 60, 90 triangle. What are the sides? Opposite 30 is 1. Opposite 60 is square root of 3. Hypotenuse is 2. You could also draw it this way. Do the sides stay the same? No, they switch because opposite 30 should be the shorter one because 30 is smaller. Opposite 60 should be square root of 3. And then the hypotenuse is 2. Yeah?
You said that we don't have to do the arc? Look, the arc tangent, arc sine.
Correct.
There are no arc sine, arc tangent.
Oh, that's kind.
You don't have to do it.
No, I mean, like, we have,
Like these ones?
Yeah, I know
We have
that,
extra.
but it's fine.
No.
Those ones, yes or no?
Okay, moving on. Victor, you will get to a point where you discover that they're in there. When you get to that point, then you can let me know. Okay.
But he'll be right.
So, these are your friendly triangles. The other friendly triangle is the 45, 45, 90 triangle. So, when you draw in to your coordinate axes, your little triangle there, you're always going to draw the triangle to the x-axis, never to the y, which is why we never use 90 or 270 when we're figuring these out. It's always 180 minus something, 180 plus something, or 360 minus the angle, okay, depending on where we live. So, don't zone out on me. You got this. You gotta want it. You gotta want it, okay? What are the sides to the 45, 45, 90? 1, 1, square root of 2. You'll know you did it right because the Pythagorean theorem works. You'll know you did them wrong if the Pythagorean theorem doesn't work. 1 squared plus 1 squared is the square root of 2 squared. Square root of 3 squared plus 1 squared is 4. Okay, this works. If I had gotten the sides wrong, like a lot of you want to put square root of 3 as the hypotenuse, that's wrong, and you'll find that out because the Pythagorean theorem doesn't work. So, if you're really struggling with your friendly angles still, I would recommend, like, the first thing when you sit down to do your final, like, before you do your final, look at your friendly angles, and then the first thing, draw your friendly triangles so you don't forget them, so you don't get it wrong, okay? So here, I'm going to draw in my friendly angles. Opposite 60 should be square root of 3. Thank you, one of you, right? Opposite 60 goes square root of 3. That means next to 60 is 1, hypotenuse is 2. So can I find sine of 120 now? Sure. Sine of 120 is the same as sine of this angle, which is opposite over hypotenuse. Good job. So the answer is square root of 3 over 2. What about cosine? Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. Adjacent is 1, hypotenuse is 2. Is that right?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
No.
Never mind.
What is wrong with that?
It is.
Adjacent over hypotenuse, right?
It is adjacent over hypotenuse.
nothing wrong.
Is it cosine?
So, since this goes backward, this one is really negative, right? So it's negative 1/2 because cosine is negative in the second quadrant.
A little tricky on you.
Mm-hmm. I went there. Okay. In this quadrant, both of them are going to be negative. In this quadrant, only sine and tangent will be negative. Okay. So you always have to look at those sides of the triangle and imagine all the ones that go that way are negative and all the ones that go down are negative. Okay, what about tangent of 120? Tangent is opposite over adjacent. So the opposite side is 3, square root of 3. The adjacent is negative 1. So you can do that for every angle in the circle. All right, is that all I wanted to cover? PreCalc B, you can unsubscribe. Everyone else, we're still going.
Okay, third quadrant, what's negative? Just be- just- Sine,
Still
cosine?
subscribe.
All students take calculus. All of them are positive. Sine's positive, tangent's positive, cosine's positive.
So
Okay.
it-
The PreCalc A and PreCalc AB, we must continue. Okay, how do we do inverse trig functions?
Ah, you pray.
Someone wrote Jesus as an answer to something on a math test, and I was like, yeah, usually the right answer. Still lost 5 points.
What? That's
Oh.
so
Find the area under the, find the volume of this thing. And they're like, Jesus. And I'm like, I don't think Jesus is a volume. That might be a false theology. I'm just saying you gotta watch out for that stuff. Okay, So, inverse trig functions. So these are arc sine, arc cosine, arc tangent. Looks like that. You have a button for it on your calculator. How do we find the inverse sine, cosine, tangent of something? Well, these take in the angle and give you a number. This takes in a number, and the answer is in angle. Not to be confused with the beings from heaven. Those are angels. Angels, little wings. They're like scary. Because every time they appear, everyone's like, do not be afraid.
The one with 7 eyes and looks like a ring.
I think when people say that they're scary looking though, I think that's wrong. Like, if someone just shows up out of nowhere, that's scary. Like, you're scared because they appeared, not necessarily because they're scared.
Well,
Now,
do we know what they look like?
not really.
I mean, same.
But they all say, do not be afraid.
But wait, Mr. Blender.
But like,
Presence of an
they appear, so like, of course you're gonna be scared. Anyway,
Mr. Blender, aren't they supposed to have like eyes all over them and have like the head?
that's one of them.
Head of a bird.
I personally believe that that's a helicopter.
Oh, that one was a helicopter?
Yeah, because if you're like 2,000 years ago and you see a helicopter in a vision, like, you're not gonna, like, John's sitting there and he's like, what is this thing with blanket? Excuse me, I'm telling a story. If you're like John, you see a vision, like, and there's this flying thing with rotating blades everywhere and like blinking lights and windows. They didn't have windows back then. Are you kidding me? So like, what are you gonna say? You're gonna say like, it was like this flying beast with a bunch of eyes and like, you know?
Does it have a halo?
Like, and then tanks, same deal. It's like, oh, it's like an elephant with, like, sure, a tank looks like an elephant. It's got the little, like, thing that shoots stuff out, and it's, like, big, but, like,
An elephant.
What if it has like hands?
so, you gotta weigh some of that out. All right, inverse trig functions. So, the easiest of these problems would be like this. What is arc sine of 1/2? What angle can you plug into sine to get 1/2 out?
60. 30. Never mind.
30 degrees. Why? Because the opposite side is 1, the adjacent is, or the hypotenuse is 2. So if I draw my 30, 60, 90 triangle, I see that that's 30, because 1 is opposite the 30, the hypotenuse is 2. So that gives me an angle of 30 degrees. Now, some things you have to be careful of is what to do with minus signs. So what would arc sine of negative 1/2 be? It would be negative 30. That's where they get you. Okay, so what are the general rules? For arc sine, arc cosine, and arc tangent, they will only give you answers in 2 of the quadrants. You can always check these with your calculator because you have a button for this to make sure you chose correctly. But arc sine and arc tangent will give you answers between negative 90 degrees and 90 degrees. Same thing here. Arc cosine will give you angles between 0 and 180 degrees. Okay, so if I did arc cosine of 1/2, that would be 60. If I did arc cosine of negative 1/2, that would be not negative 60, but what's the corresponding angle in the second quadrant? Well, we did it right here. What angle do you plug into cosine to get negative 1/2? You plug in 120. This is where knowing your friendly angles really helps you. Make flashcards, do something. You must know them. If you don't know them, you will surely fail. I think like 1 or 2 of the problems on the final are literally like sine of 120 plus cosine of 240. And you're like, if you know them, you get it. And if you don't know them, you don't. So like know them. Okay, These are the easy inverse trig function problems. The hard ones are when you have to do this. Cosine of arcsine of -3/4. How do you do this problem? Well, you could plug it into your calculator and you might get the right answer, but you will get no points. How do you do it correctly? You're going to sketch in your coordinate plane where this angle lives. You're going to draw that triangle. So, where is arcsine negative? What quadrant? First, second, third, or fourth? Julian? When is arcsine negative?
When it's -90.
So which quadrant? First, second, third, or
Oh.
fourth?
That would be second, quadrant or first?
So -90 is here, and 90 is here.
So third and fourth? All
There's
of them?
only the fourth.
Why
There's only one answer. Arcsine only gives you angles between -90 and 90. So if you plug in a positive number, it gives you an angle here. If you plug in a negative angle, it gives you an
Oh,
angle
okay, yeah.
here, okay? So, I'm gonna draw a triangle here. I do not know what the sides are. But this describes an angle where the opposite side is -3. The hypotenuse is 4. Can I find cosine of this angle now? Sure, I have the triangle already. This is easy. This is like algebra 2 stuff now. How do I find the cosine of this angle? It's adjacent over hypotenuse. So what's the adjacent side?
X. You don't know.
We don't know. So we have to do the Pythagorean theorem. It's like a cool theme song. So x squared plus 9 is 16. X equals the square root of 7. So that's the square root of 7. So what's cosine of that? Square root of 7 over 4. If you plug that into your calculator, you're not going to get an exact answer. Okay, so draw the sketch, draw the triangle, and then go from there. The suffering is real. Not to be confused with the student.
Who's real or soft?
Israel.
Oh.
All right, let's get started.